Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. So with patch 7.3 right around the corner, it's time to take a look at all of the biggest changes happening, and for this patch there are going to be a lot of nerfs. Some of the more problematic champions did finally get a nerf this patch, but at the same time certain champions that do require nerfs seem to have been untouched. So there's a lot of information to cover and talk about, so as usual if you guys end up enjoying this video, make sure to hit that like button to show your support, and if you want me to continue doing this for every new patch. But either way, without any further ado, let's get right into the first big change. So starting things off for this one is going to be Camille. Camille has been absolutely dominant in the top lane for several patches now and hasn't really been receiving too many nerfs. She's been somewhat of an effective pick against most of the tanky top laners, all thanks to that extra true damage on her Q ability, the second part of it, but it seems like Riot is finally going to be toning that down by just a bit. So rather than the second hit offering an extra 100% bonus damage, it will now only be 80, which in turn should also affect the amount of true damage that the second part of the Q deals as well. But her Q ability is not the only thing that ended up getting nerfed, because her W not only got a 10% reduction in how much it slows the target that you hit, but her E ability has had its mana cost increased by 20, the stun duration lowered, and also it now only offers the extra attack speed if you hit an enemy champion, not just an enemy unit. So all in all, these nerfs aren't absolutely substantial, but it's going to be enough to put Camille in hopefully what will be a decent spot where she'll be a good pick, but she won't be a completely overpowered pick where there's very minimal counterplay and there's very minimal things you can do against her. But I'm still very curious to see how much this will affect her win rate and just how popular or less popular she will become. Especially since champions in the top lane right now like Maokai and Nautilus, who are very strong and very tanky, are going to be just consistently better picks than Camille in almost every single way, especially now of course with the Camille nerfs. Following Camille, we also have Ivern. Now the nerfs happening to Ivern aren't anything completely substantial, but it is going to be hitting the right spot. It's going to be specifically focused on his ultimate and even more specifically on Daisy's armor and magic resistance per rank. So rank 1, her MR and armor has been lowered by 5, then followed by 20 at rank 2 and a total of 30 at rank 3. This is a pretty important nerf because for the most part, especially later on into the game, I've seen many times where Ivern would instantly recast Daisy the second she would die because she would take that long to kill and she would be just that durable. My only concern with this nerf is the fact that it's not enough of a reduction in armor on the first level because she can still tank the towers very easily, and this makes tower diving with Ivern just simply easier than it should be overall. All in all, it does seem like Ivern has more or less fell out of flavor as there are just simply better junglers that are just better at doing what they do, such as Kha'Zix, Rengar, Hecarim, Graves, and so on. So this is going to be a decent hit to Ivern, and I do feel like his play rate should even further drop down again just because there's just so many better options, but I guess we'll see how it goes after the patch finally hits. The next big change is going to be happening towards the Jace, another very dominant champion that has been very popular and also very successful as of the past couple of patches, especially ever since the changes happening to lethality. Jace can be played successfully in the mid lane and in the top lane. He can abuse almost every single laner. He can go into the mid game dealing an insane amount of damage while still scaling and having a lot of poke into the late game. So it seems like Riot is aware of this and they have nerfed him down to the point where the damage on his Q in melee form has been lowered by 5 at rank 1 and a total of 30 at rank 5. The transformation on his ultimate, when you go from the gun to the hammer, the bonus AD ratio has also been lowered by 15%, and the mana cost on his E ability in melee form has been also increased by 15. Now I actually don't really think this is the biggest nerf in the entire world. If anything, the biggest change has to be the one happening to the AD ratio on the change on his ultimate, but the damage on his range form hasn't really been touched whatsoever, so I feel like he'll still be able to dish out a lot of damage, just his all-in potential at rank 2 or rank 3 is not going to be as high. I don't think this will bring Jace out of the meta, and I still feel like he's going to be a very strong and highly contested pick, but it will bring him down just a couple of levels and prevent him from getting those very early and cheesy first bloods. Following Jace, we also have one of the best junglers at the very moment in the current meta, Kha'Zix. The nerfs he will be receiving is very specific to his Q ability, but at the same time that is his most problematic one. The bonus AD ratio is going to be lowered by 20%, so 120 rather than 140, and the evolved form of his Q ability is also going to be nerfed, where the cooldown refunded is going to be lowered down to 45% rather than 60. Again, only if it hits an isolated target. This is a really good nerf because not only has Kha'Zix's Q ability been simply doing way too much damage, but it's also been making his clear way too strong. He can get those early dragons way too easily, and this will just put him in a hopefully little bit of a better spot, yet I still feel like even after this, he is going to be a very strong pick regardless, and he's still going to be highly contested. They maybe should have also touched his passive or just put a couple of extra nerfs over to his Q ability as well, because again, this just doesn't feel like it's a whole lot, even though it is a nerf regardless. And even though it's really good that champions like Kha'Zix are finally receiving some nerfs, it also makes me a little bit sad that champions like Hecarim seem to still not be getting any changes or nerfs happening whatsoever, even though it's been several patches of them being considered a top tier jungler. Next up on the chopping block, we also have LeBlanc. Now, LeBlanc has been considered to be one of the best mid laners for several patches now, pretty much ever since her rework, and she's banned almost every single game. But it seems like Riot is finally ready to address this, yet it doesn't seem like they're doing the best of jobs at it. Because the only nerf happening to LeBlanc is going to be to her Sigil of Malice being her passive. And the easiest way to look at this change or to understand it is simply it will do less damage at the first few levels, maybe the first half of your levels, but then it'll start to ramp up and actually do a bit more damage at the very late stages of the game. Now, in terms of the nerf itself, it does make sense. You want to lower her early power, especially in the laning phase, because it is very strong, especially if she ever lands her E ability. But the fact that they only touched her passive without touching her Q, or especially her E ability, is the thing that kind of concerns me a little bit, or maybe even increasing her cooldowns by just a tad. So will this actually make LeBlanc useless and bring her down to a level that's actually understandable, where you can actually play around her and she won't be getting banned 24/7? I honestly don't really think so, but I mean, it will lower her power by just a bit. It's just the question is it enough? Once the changes finally hit the live server, we'll of course have a better way to understand it and to actually gauge her strength, but in the meantime, I really don't think this is going to be enough to lower her power to a point where she's just going to be considered an okay champion. Next up, we also have some changes happening to Malzahar, some of which aren't really necessarily 100% confirmed. The first of the changes is having the Voidlings spawn after a short delay rather than instantly whenever you activate the W ability, which is going to be a little bit of a nerf, but nothing too crazy. But the second part is also having the Voidlings gradually slow down based off of the distance from Malzahar. So for this part, you can think of it very similar to that of Victor's ultimate. The closer Victor's ultimate is towards Victor himself, then the faster it'll move, but the longer the distance is between the two, the slower it'll begin to travel as well. All in all, this isn't the biggest change in the entire world, but I feel like they're trying to focus on the Malzahar support that's just simply being extremely dominant, with the Voidlings being able to chase way too aggressively and having that extra movement speed, and you pretty much are forced out of lane, even though they still will chase you most likely all the way to your tower. So if these changes do finally hit the live service for patch 7.3, hopefully this will bring support Malzahar down a few levels, because the W is without question the biggest problem. And the fact that this Malzahar support has gone so out of hand for so many patches is a little bit ridiculous. But moving along, we have to talk about Rengar, because Kha'Zix got nerfed, so only natural that Rengar also receives a nerf, who is arguably even better than Kha'Zix in the very current meta. The first of which is going to be a nerf towards his Q ability, where the dash range has been lowered by 50 units. This isn't the biggest change in the entire world, and it's not going to be the biggest nerf either, but it is going to be something that's pretty useful and will actually help you at least try and outplay his Q ability whenever he's trying to go in for the kill with the extra movement speed or from his ultimate. But the second nerf happening, which is to his W ability, is removing the extra CC offered whenever you activate the empowered version of this ability, because currently it not only removes all current CC, but it also prevents all incoming CCs for 1.5 seconds, but now it will no longer do the second part and only remove any current CC you have whenever you use the ability. Honestly, the fact that Rengar even has an ability that essentially is a free Q assess is already kind of ridiculous for an assassin champion, but the fact that it actually also had the second part where it had that extra 1.5 seconds of being invulnerable to CC is a little bit too much. So now that that's gone, maybe at least Rengar will be a bit more easier to deal with and at least have more counterplay to him whenever he jumps out of his ultimate, but I still feel like it's a little bit awkward to even have any CC prevention whatsoever in his kit. But that is still not all the nerfs that Rengar is receiving, because he's also getting a little bit to his ultimate, where the duration has been lowered by 2 seconds at rank 1, 6 seconds at rank 2, and 10 seconds at rank 3. This was also a very big problem when facing Rengar, because he can stay invisible in his ultimate, especially at rank 3, for much too long. I mean, 30 seconds is a very long time to run around stealth and looking for someone to kill. Even 20 seconds is still arguably way too long, and maybe rank 3 should only be 15 seconds. But regardless, at least Riot is still looking at an actual way to bring Rengar to an agreeable state to where people can actually play against him and not feel completely frustrated. But I still feel like his ultimate could have taken a little bit of a bigger hit. Next up, we actually have a buff happening to Tristana of all champions, where the duration on her Q ability has been increased by 2 seconds. Now obviously this isn't the biggest buff in the entire world, nor is there really all much to talk about, but the fact that it's happening to 1, an ADC, and 2, to Tristana of all ADCs is actually very interesting. Now again, looking at it, 2 extra seconds on her Q ability doesn't seem like it's all that much, but if you were to look at this buff very late into the game, that extra 2 seconds of just dealing that much more damage is going to be extremely impactful. So at the beginning stages of the game, it's not all that much different, but later on into the game, especially late into the game, this buff I think can actually be very impactful. Again, it is a little bit random that it's happening to Tristana of all champions, since she's been sort of in a really random spot and you haven't really seen her, but maybe this will help people realize that the champion still exists, because for the most part against assassins, Tristana actually isn't all that bad, since not only does she have an escape inside her kit, but she also has her ultimate, which she can push back any assassins that are trying to come at her and kill her. But it seems like Tristana is not the only champion that is going to be receiving some buffs for this patch, because Vladimir is also getting a little bit. The first of which is very simple, but his base auto attack damage has been increased to 55 from 52, which at first sounds kind of weird and random and even kind of stupid, but at the same time is actually very useful because Vladimir has a lot of issues CSing in the first several levels since his Q cooldown is simply much too long. So his auto attack damage being a little bit higher will make it that much easier to actually last hit with those somewhat difficult auto attacks to time. They are also thinking of changing the missile speed of his auto attack as well, I'm assuming to make it even a bit faster, since again his auto attack damage and his auto attack speed is very awkward and last hitting with it is just not very fun. But following this, he's also getting a bit of buffs to his Q ability where the AP ratio has been increased by 5%, the base damage has overall been increased by a total of 25 at rank 5, but to sort of try and compensate, the extra damage offered by his empowered Q has been lowered to 85% from 100. But if you do the math, overall this is going to be an actual buff to Vladimir, though not the most significant one overall. I'm still not entirely sure what their intent was or what the purpose of this buff was. I mean, other than the auto attack damage, which will help his laning phase to try and CS since the Q cooldown is simply too long, I'm not entirely sure why they decided to buff his Q damage of all things and then kind of also nerf it in a way to put it where it still is a buff but not necessarily a big one. But there may be a bit more things coming to him in the next couple of patches that will sort of complement these buffs coming for patch 7.3. And the final nerf happening this patch is actually going to be towards Zyra. She has been somewhat of a dominant support champion as well, just being able to dish out so much damage to the point where she's almost like a second AP mid laner. But the nerfs happening to her are as follows. The AI on the plants has been slightly changed to where now the plants won't hit the targets that are beside them unless you already have hit that target with a spell from one of your kits, whether it's to proc the actual plant itself while also hitting them, or having the plant there and then hitting them with another spell. So all in all, this should definitely reduce the zoning potential that Zyra has with her plants, and it will actually force Zyra players to try and hit their abilities rather than just simply summoning the plants and know that they will attack the champion if the champion happens to walk a little too close. But just to sort of put the cherry on the cake, the mana cost on her Q ability has been increased by 10. Now the last couple of things to talk about before I end off the video are going to be two different things coming out, both of which are related to the Blood Moon theme. The first of which is the new game mode that is called Hunt of the Blood Moon, where essentially you're just playing a bunch of assassins versus another bunch of assassins, and you try and kill each other as much as possible while also getting certain objectives within the enemy jungle. Think of it as just being a very big brawl of assassin only champions. It's pretty fun to play and it is kind of a nice waste of time here and there, but in all honesty it isn't anything absolutely out of the box or anything completely special. Following this, we also have a bunch of really sweet new Blood Moon skins coming out for Jhin, Talon, Diana, and also Twisted Fate, all of which I have to say look very cool. But either way guys, that is about it for this video. If you did enjoy it or found something useful or informative, then make sure to hit that like button to show your support. Also let me know which of the changes you think are going to be the most impactful for the coming patch down in the comments below. But either way, I truly thank each and every one of you so much for watching and hope to see you for the next video. Peace.